In the history of Hollywood, there is a paradox that is difficult to explain. The woman who made the entire nation laugh every week lived a life filled with pressure, controversy, and sometimes loneliness behind the stage lights. Millions of viewers remember Lucille Ball through the image of Lucy Ricardo in I Love Lucy, a clumsy wife who constantly comes up with ridiculous plans and ends up turning everything into chaos. A comedy icon, a woman who always seemed joyful. But Hollywood, and the people who worked with her knew a very different Lucille Ball. A woman with fierce ambition, a relentless perfectionist, and sometimes someone who made an entire film crew uneasy. Because behind those bursts of laughter was a woman who had to fight for every step of survival in an industry famous for its cruelty. So the real question is not why Lucille Ball became a legend. The real question is this: Lucille Ball, the woman behind America's laughter, who was she, really? Lucille Ball was born in 1911 in Jamestown, New York. But her childhood was nothing like a Hollywood fairy tale. When Lucille was only 3 years old, her father died of typhoid fever. The loss came far too early and far too suddenly. Her family immediately fell into hardship. Her mother had to leave home to find work and earn a living. Lucille and her younger brother were sent to live with their grandparents and relatives. Life for the young girl was constantly changing. Homes changed. Caretakers changed. There was no stability, no sense of safety. For many years afterward, Lucille grew up with the feeling that she had to fend for herself just to be noticed. Many biographers believe that this childhood shaped the person she would later become. That because for a child who once felt left behind, the laughter of an audience is not just laughter. It is proof that you are seen, that you are recognized, that you truly exist. If Lucille Ball's childhood had already taught her that, in order to be seen, she had to step into the light on her own. Then her early years in the entertainment world taught her an even harsher lesson. Hollywood is not a place that waits for you. It is a place that eliminates you. As a hopeful young woman, Lucille left Jamestown for New York to study acting at the John Murray Anderson School of Dramatic Arts, a training ground for promising stage performers. In that classroom were many students who were confident, beautiful, and fiercely ambitious. Lucille was different. She was tall, a little awkward, and not especially striking by the beauty standards of the time. After only a short period, one of her teachers delivered a comment that might have made anyone else abandon their dream. "You have no future in this business," not because she lacked effort, but because they believed she simply did not have the qualities of a star. Not glamorous enough, not elegant enough, and sometimes too clumsy. But what they failed to realize was that the very awkwardness they used to dismiss Lucille would one day become the thing that defined her legend. After leaving school, Lucille Ball still decided to try her luck in Hollywood. The early years there looked nothing like the dream she had imagined. She appeared in dozens of films, but most of them were roles so small that audiences barely remembered her. A girl standing in the background at a party, a model walking briefly across the frame, a character without a single line. At the time, that Hollywood was filled with stunning movie stars, and Lucille Ball was not the most beautiful woman in the room. There were periods when she struggled just to survive. Money was scarce, work was uncertain, but in those years that seemed like failure. Lucille began to notice something important. Hollywood had hundreds of actresses trying to be more beautiful than everyone else. But almost no one was willing to look foolish in front of the camera. No one wanted to make an ugly face. No one wanted to appear clumsy. No one wanted to break the illusion of perfection. Lucille Ball was the opposite. If she had to fall down to make the audience laugh, she would fall. If she had to make herself look ridiculous, she would do it. and little by little, among hundreds of Hollywood's glamorous glamour girls, something strange began to happen. And the girl who had once been told she had no future in entertainment was quietly creating an entirely new path for herself, a path the whole world would later recognize, the path of Lucille Ball. By the late 1930s, after years of struggling in Hollywood, Lucille Ball was finally beginning to receive more noticeable roles. But the greatest turning point in her life did not begin with a role. It began with a meeting. In 1940, while working on the film Too Many Girls, Lucille Ball met Desi Arnaz, a young Cuban musician who was gaining popularity with his band. Desi Arnaz was completely different from the men Lucille had known before. He was youthful, fiery. He spoke with a charming Spanish accent, and he carried an energy that seemed almost impossible to contain. Lucille Ball was drawn to him immediately. Friends later recalled that there was what Hollywood often calls fireworks between them, a spark that ignited the moment they met. After only a few months of dating, they decided to get married. It was a romance that was fast, intense, and almost destined to be turbulent, because Desi Arnaz was not just a husband. He was a touring musician. His life revolved around nightclubs, long tours, and a lifestyle filled with temptation. According to many people close to him, Desi was known for three things: drinking heavily, frequent infidelity, and rarely staying home for long. Lucille Ball loved him, but that love also meant enduring repeated heartbreak. In the early years of their marriage, the two of them were almost living in separate worlds. Lucille stayed in Hollywood making films. Desi traveled across the country with his band. They were apart for months at a time. Arguments began to appear, then apologies, then reconciliations. The cycle repeated for years. But the strangest irony was this: while their real-life marriage was full of tension, Hollywood was beginning to see something completely different. A couple with remarkable on-screen chemistry, a hilarious woman, a charismatic Latin man, and from that unusual combination, an idea slowly began to form. By the early 1950s, American television was still a new frontier. Many programs were produced quickly, simply, and few people believed that a sitcom could create lasting cultural impact. But in that very moment, Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz brought something entirely different to the screen. Its name was I Love Lucy. At first, many people in the television industry were skeptical, not because the idea was too complicated, but because it was too unusual. A real-life married couple playing a married couple on television. A white American woman married to a Cuban man, something that still made some audiences uneasy at the time. Many producers feared viewers would not accept it, but Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz refused to change their idea. They wanted the show to reflect their real lives, a marriage filled with laughter, misunderstandings, and then the kind of chaotic situations any couple might experience. When the show premiered in 1951, the audience reaction was almost immediate. Every week, millions of American families turned on their televisions to see what would happen next. In I Love Lucy, the character Lucy, Ricardo, was not the perfect wife audiences were used to seeing on screen. She was not always elegant. She did not always have everything under control. Instead, Lucy constantly invented bizarre schemes to become famous, and those plans usually ended in hilarious disaster. Some scenes later became legendary moments in television history. Lucy stomping grapes in a massive vat at a winery. Lucy desperately stuffing chocolates into her mouth as a factory conveyor belt moved too fast. Lucy disguising herself, pretending to be someone else, and creating endless comedic chaos. What made Lucille Ball different was that she was never afraid to look ridiculous. In an era when actresses were expected to always be graceful, beautiful, and perfectly composed, Lucille Ball did the opposite. She was willing to fall down, shout, make absurd faces, and ruin everything, as long as the audience laughed. Because of that, Lucy Ricardo became a character audiences felt deeply connected to. Not perfect, not idealized, just human. But the most revolutionary moment of the show came from something surprisingly ordinary. In 1952, Lucille Ball became pregnant in real life. At the time, that was a major problem for television. Networks even avoided using the word pregnant on air. Other shows used softer phrases like expecting or with child. But I Love Lucy broke that rule. The producers decided to write Lucy's pregnancy directly into the storyline of the show. When the episode in which Lucy gave birth aired in 1953, it became an unprecedented television event. Tens of millions of Americans watched together. The entire country seemed to be witnessing the same moment. Families gathered around their televisions. People discussed the episode the next day, and everyone waited eagerly for the next one. In that moment, I Love Lucy was no longer just a sitcom. It had become a part of American culture, and Lucille Ball, the woman once told she had no future in entertainment, had now become the most recognizable face on American television. The success of I Love Lucy did more than make Lucille Ball the most recognizable face on American television. It brought her to a position that very few women in Hollywood had ever reached: power. At first, the production company behind the show, Desilu Productions, was founded by Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz. But after their marriage gradually fell apart and eventually ended, an unexpected turning point occurred. Lucille Ball bought Desi Arnaz's shares in the company. That meant she was no longer just the star of the most famous show on television. She became the head of a major television studio. In the early 1960s, this was almost unheard of. Hollywood at the time was still a world where major decisions were made almost entirely by men. But Lucille Ball entered the boardroom not as an actress. She entered as an executive. In a woman who decided which shows would be produced, which scripts would be approved, and who would have the opportunity to appear on television screens. Under her leadership, Desilu Productions became one of the largest television production companies in the United States. And it was Lucille Ball who made decisions that would later be considered historic. Among them were two projects that many people initially believed were far too risky. A science fiction series built around strange ideas about the future of humanity. That was Star Trek, and a show about complex, high-stakes espionage missions. That was Mission Impossible. Both programs would later become television and film franchises lasting for decades. But at the time, they were simply ideas that few people were willing to gamble on, except Lucille Ball. Then in a Hollywood where women were rarely given real power, Lucille Ball accomplished something almost unimaginable. She was not only standing in front of the camera, she was sitting in the most powerful chair behind it. But power and success rarely come without a price. For Lucille Ball, that price was sometimes the way people perceived her behind the scenes. Not everyone who worked with Lucille Ball remembered her with warmth. To many colleagues, she was a near-extreme perfectionist. On set, everything had to be precise. Every camera position, every line of dialogue, every small movement within a comedic scene. If a shot did not land with the timing she wanted, she could demand that it be filmed again. If someone stood in the wrong spot for the lighting or the camera, she would immediately stop the scene. Some people said that working with Lucille Ball was not easy. She was strict, demanding, and sometimes unable to hide her frustration when things did not go according to plan. Now, but those who understood her more deeply saw another story behind that strictness. Lucille Ball entered Hollywood at a time when women were rarely given real power. A female actress could become famous, but running a studio, controlling a major television production, or making creative decisions, those roles were almost always held by men. Lucille Ball understood that very clearly. She knew that if she appeared too soft, if she allowed others to control the show, Hollywood would quickly find someone else to replace her. So she chose a harder path. She chose to control everything, from the camera angles, from the script, to the precise rhythm of every comedic beat in a scene. To audiences, Lucille Ball was the woman who made America laugh. But behind the scenes, she was a woman constantly fighting to maintain control of her own story. By the late 1980s, the world of television had changed dramatically from the moment Lucille Ball first stepped into it. New shows had appeared. New faces had become stars. A new generation of viewers had grown up in front of television screens. But the name Lucille Ball was still there, not as a rising star, but as an icon. On April 27, 1989, Lucille Ball passed away at the age of 77 following complications from a heart condition. The news spread quickly. Across the United States, television networks began airing reruns of old I Love Lucy episodes. Familiar scenes appeared again. Lucy stumbling, Lucy running frantically across the stage, Lucy trying to hide another failed scheme. And once again, millions of people laughed. There was something extraordinary about that moment, because when Lucille Ball passed away, she did not leave behind only films or television programs. She left behind an entirely new way of making television. She proved that a woman could stand at the center of a comedy show, run a major production company, and reshape the way an entire industry operates. Before Lucille Ball, very few women in Hollywood were given real control. After Lucille Ball, that door began to open. And perhaps her greatest legacy does not lie in the laughter she created, but in what she proved to all of Hollywood. Comedy is not a territory reserved for men. There is something very remarkable about Lucille Ball, the woman who made millions of people laugh in front of their television screens every week, was also someone who had to fight almost her entire life to be taken seriously within her own industry. She did not enter Hollywood with advantages. She was not the most striking beauty. She was not the person anyone expected to become a star. But through persistence, boldness, and a completely unique sense of comedy, Lucille Ball changed the way television was created. Perhaps that is the paradox of fame. The people who make us laugh the most are sometimes the ones who understand sadness the most deeply. And perhaps that is why, even today, decades after I Love Lucy left the air, the laughter of Lucille Ball still echoes. Not simply as comedy, but as the mark of a woman who rewrote the history of American television.